For refusing a $35,000 loan, my daughter-in-law threw me out of the house. She screamed, "A useless old man like you should live on the street." She had no idea my son was standing at the door watching everything. He just said one sentence that made her go pale. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought my own daughter-in-law would look at me with such disgust. But there she was, standing in my kitchen, the kitchen I'd cooked in for 30 years, staring at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "Mark, we need that money," Mia said for the third time, her voice getting sharper with each repetition. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against the granite countertop I'd paid to install when she moved in. $35,000. It's not like you're using it anyway. I set down my coffee mug carefully, my hand steadier than I felt. At 65, I'd learned when to pick my battles, and this felt like one worth fighting. "Mia, I already told you. That money is for emergencies. Real emergencies." Her laugh was cold, bitter. "This is a real emergency, Mark. You just don't understand because you're—" She waved her hand dismissively, searching for the right words to cut me down. "Because I'm what?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to hear the answer. "Because you're old and out of touch. You don't understand how the world works anymore." I felt something twist in my chest. This woman, who'd been living in my house for 5 years, eating my food, using my electricity, had never spoken to me this way before. Oh, she'd been cold, distant, but never outright cruel. "I understand perfectly," I said quietly. "I understand that $35,000 doesn't just grow on trees, and I understand that you haven't told me what this emergency actually is." Her eyes flashed. "I don't owe you an explanation. Joseph agrees with me." That hit harder than I expected. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his mother died when he was 12. The thought that he was siding with her against me made my stomach turn. "Then Joseph can ask me himself," I said, standing up from the table, "when he gets home from work." "He's not going to ask you, Mark." Mia's voice was getting louder now, more aggressive. "He sent me to handle this because he knew you'd be difficult about it." I turned to face her fully, studying her face. Something was different today. Usually, Mia maintained this perfect facade, the devoted wife, the respectful daughter-in-law. But now her mask was slipping, and what I saw underneath made my skin crawl. "I'm not being difficult," I said. "I'm being responsible. That money is my retirement, my security. Joseph understands that." "Security?" She let out another harsh laugh. "What do you need security for, Mark? You live here rent-free, we buy your food, we pay your medical bills. You're basically a charity case already." The words hit me like physical blows. I gripped the back of my chair, my knuckles going white. "Excuse me? You heard me." She crossed her arms, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw her true face. "You're a burden, an old man taking up space in our house, eating our food, using our utilities. The least you could do is contribute when we actually need something." I opened my mouth to respond, but she wasn't finished. $35,000, Mark. That's all we're asking for. After everything we've done for you, everything we've given you, and you can't even do this one thing for us? "This is my house," I said quietly. "No, it's our house, Joseph's and mine. You just happen to live in it." The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. I stood there, looking at this woman who'd sat at my dinner table, who I'd bought Christmas presents for, who I'd welcomed into my family, and I realized I'd never really known her at all. I said, "No, Mia, the answer is no." Her face contorted with rage. "Fine. You know what, Mark? I'm done pretending to care about you. I'm done pretending you're welcome here." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're not wanted here anymore." Her voice was rising to a shout now. "You're not wanted, you're not needed, and frankly, you're pathetic." I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I think you need to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," she screamed. "I'm sick of tiptoeing around you, sick of pretending you matter. You want to keep your precious money? Fine, but you can't keep it, and live here too." "Mia, this is my house." "Not anymore, it's not." She stepped closer, her finger jabbing at my chest. "You want to act like a selfish old miser? Then you can be a selfish old miser somewhere else. Pack your bags, Mark. You're done here." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process what was happening. "You can't kick me out of my own house. Watch me." Her smile was vicious. You're nothing but a useless old man who should be living on the streets where he belongs. That's where people like you end up when they outlive their usefulness." The words echoed in the sudden silence. I felt something break inside me, something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. This woman, this person I'd tried so hard to accept and love for my son's sake, had just stripped away every shred of dignity I had left. "A useless old man," I repeated softly. "That's right. Useless, unwanted, and in the way. Joseph and I have been talking about this for months, Mark. We're tired of taking care of you. We're tired of pretending you're part of this family." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words settling over me like a shroud. When I opened them again, she was still staring at me with that cold, satisfied smile. "Get out, Mark. Pack whatever you can carry and get out. We'll send the rest of your junk to whatever nursing home will take you." That's when I heard it. The soft sound of the front door closing. Footsteps in the hallway. Mia heard it too. Her face went pale, her confident posture suddenly uncertain. "Mia!" Joseph's voice called from the entryway. "Dad, I'm home." I watched as the color drained completely from her face. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. The cruel, confident woman who just destroyed me with her words had vanished, replaced by someone who looked genuinely terrified. Joseph appeared in the kitchen doorway, his work shirt still wrinkled from his construction job, his face tired but alert. His eyes moved from me to his wife, taking in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked quietly. Mia's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Joseph, honey, I didn't hear you come in." My son's gaze moved to me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating. "I heard enough," he said simply. And in that moment, watching my daughter-in-law's face crumble with fear, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to change forever. The silence in the kitchen stretched on forever. Joseph stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Mia, with an expression I'd never seen on my son's face before. It wasn't anger exactly, but something colder, more deliberate. "Joseph," Mia started, her voice shaking, "your father and I were just having a discussion about how he's a useless old man who should be living on the streets." Joseph's voice was eerily calm. "About how he's a burden and a charity case? About how you're kicking him out of his own house?" The blood drained from her face completely. "You don't understand. He was being unreasonable about the loan, and You just what, Mia?" Joseph stepped into the kitchen, and I noticed something I'd missed before. There was no surprise in his demeanor, no shock at finding his wife screaming at his father. It was almost like he'd been expecting this. I sank back into my chair, my legs suddenly unsteady. Looking back now, I realized there had been signs. Small things I'd dismissed or explained away because I wanted so desperately to believe my son was happy. 3 months ago, I'd walked into the kitchen to find Mia on the phone, her voice low and urgent. When she saw me, she'd quickly hung up and smiled that bright, fake smile she always wore around me. "Just talking to my sister," she'd said, but something in her eyes had made me uneasy. I'd found her going through the mail that came addressed to me, carefully opening envelopes and reading my bank statements, my insurance documents. When I'd asked her about it, she'd laughed it off. "Just trying to help organize things, Mark. You know how scattered you can be sometimes." Scattered. That word had stung, even though I'd let it slide. I wasn't scattered. I'd been managing my own finances for 45 years, thank you very much. Then there were the late-night whispered conversations between her and Joseph. Conversations that stopped abruptly whenever I entered the room. The way she'd started treating me like I was invisible, like I was furniture in my own home. The way she'd begun making decisions about household matters without consulting me, as if my opinion didn't matter anymore. But the strangest thing had been Joseph's behavior over the past few weeks. My son, who used to come home and tell me about his day, who used to ask my advice about work problems and life decisions, had become distant. Not cold exactly, but watchful. Like he was studying me or studying something. I'd attributed it to marriage stress, to the natural process of a young man pulling away from his father to focus on his wife. I'd even felt guilty about it, wondering if I was being too dependent, too much of a presence in their lives. Now, watching the way he looked at Mia, I realized how wrong I'd been about everything. "Dad," Joseph said, still not taking his eyes off his wife. How long has this been going on? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How long had what been going on? The disrespect? The cruelty? The slow erosion of my place in my own home? How long has she been talking to you like this? He clarified, his voice gentle when he spoke to me. But his gaze remained fixed on Mia like a predator watching prey. Joseph, please, Mia whispered. You're misunderstanding the situation. Your father was being stubborn about the loan, and things got heated. You know how he can be when what, Mia? The temperature in Joseph's voice dropped several degrees. When he acts like a human being who deserves basic respect in his own home, I finally found my voice. Son, I don't want to cause problems between you and your wife. Maybe I should just... You're not going anywhere, Dad. Joseph finally turned to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes made me catch my breath. Love, yes, but also something else. Guilt. Deep, painful guilt. You're not the problem here. He walked over to the kitchen window, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. From where I sat, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched tight. 3 weeks ago, he said quietly, I came home early from work, sick with the flu. I was going to surprise you both, maybe ask Dad to make his famous soup. Mia went very still beside the counter. I heard voices from the kitchen. Mia was on the phone with someone, and she was laughing, really laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. Joseph turned back to face us, and I saw something raw and painful in his expression. She was talking about Dad, about how pathetic he was, how she couldn't wait until he died so we could have the house to ourselves. She was describing in detail all the ways she planned to make his life miserable until he either moved out or had a heart attack. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. She told whoever she was talking to that she'd already started going through his financial documents, figuring out exactly how much he had saved up. She said she was working on a plan to get access to it all. Mia's face had gone gray. Joseph, that's not, I would never... She said, Joseph continued, his voice getting harder, that the best part was that I was too stupid to see what was happening, that I was so desperate to keep her happy that I'd let her walk all over my own father. The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of Mia's rapid breathing. I stared at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd thought I knew completely, and realized he'd been carrying this knowledge for weeks. Watching, waiting, planning something. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Joseph's face crumpled slightly. Because I needed to be sure, because I needed to see just how far she'd go, and because... He paused, struggling with the words. Because I needed you to see it too, Dad. I needed you to understand who she really is, not who she pretends to be. I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for Mia's behavior, all the times I'd told myself I was being too sensitive, too demanding, all the times I'd convinced myself that the coldness in her eyes was just my imagination. The loan, I said suddenly, understanding flooding through me. The $35,000. This was all planned. Joseph nodded grimly. She doesn't need money for any emergency. She needs money because she's been spending hours on things she doesn't want me to know about. The phone calls, the secretive behavior, the sudden interest in your finances. It's all connected. Connected to what? I asked, though part of me was afraid to hear the answer. To the fact that my wife has been lying to me about pretty much everything for the past 6 months. Mia finally found her voice. That's not true, Joseph. You're twisting everything, making it sound worse than it is. I love you. I love this family. No, Joseph said simply. You don't. And after today, after what I just heard you say to my father, I finally understand that completely. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and held it up. The screen showed a recording app, and the timer was still running. Every word, Mia. Every cruel, heartless word you just said to the man who welcomed you into his home, who tried to love you like his own daughter. I have all of it. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something that looked like hope flickering in the darkness that had engulfed my world. Mia stared at the phone in Joseph's hand, like it was a loaded gun pointed at her chest. The color had completely drained from her face, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. You recorded me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I recorded the truth, Joseph replied, sliding the phone back into his pocket, something that seems to be in short supply around here lately. I sat frozen in my chair, my mind reeling. My son had been recording his own wife. The implications of that hit me like a physical blow. What kind of marriage required secret recordings? What had been happening in this house while I'd been living in my own little bubble of denial? "Joseph," I started, but he held up a hand. "Dad, there's more you need to know, a lot more." He pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, his movements deliberate and controlled. "This isn't just about the money, and it's not just about the way she's been treating you." Mia backed up against the counter, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "Joseph, please don't do this. Whatever you think you know." "I know about David," Joseph said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as Mia's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally a kind of desperate calculation. "Who's David?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew this wasn't going to be good news. Joseph's jaw tightened. "David Miller, Mia's co-worker from her old job, the one she's been seeing for the past 4 months. The words hit me like a sledgehammer, but they seemed to hit Mia even harder. She actually staggered backward, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "That's not true," she finally managed. "Joseph, you're being paranoid. David is just a friend, I've told you that." "I've seen the texts, Mia." Joseph's voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath it. "I've seen the hotel receipts. I found the credit card statements for the account you thought I didn't know about." I felt sick, not just for Joseph, but for myself. How had I missed this? How had I been living in the same house with someone who was destroying my son's life and been completely oblivious? "The $35,000, I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "It's for him." Joseph nodded grimly. "David's been out of work for 2 months. Mia's been supporting him with money from our joint account, but that's running low. She needed a bigger sum to keep him afloat until he finds another job. Or until she leaves you for him," I added, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "Joseph, that's insane," Mia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're making connections that don't exist. Just because I've been helping an old friend who you've been sleeping with in hotel rooms paid for with our money?" Joseph's composure finally cracked, and I heard the raw pain in his voice. "An old friend who you've been telling about our personal business, about Dad's finances, about our marriage problems?" Mia's face crumpled. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to realize that everything about our marriage has been a lie. I watched my son, this man I'd raised, be honest and trusting, and saw how much this betrayal had cost him. The lines around his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged with exhaustion, the hollow look in his face. This wasn't just discovering adultery. This was the systematic destruction of everything he'd believed about his life." "Joseph," I said quietly, "why didn't you just confront her? Why all the waiting and watching?" He turned to me and I saw something in his eyes that broke my heart. Shame. Because I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe I was being paranoid or jealous, maybe there was an explanation that would make sense of everything. He paused, swallowing hard. "And because I was a coward, Dad. I was terrified of losing her, even knowing what she was doing. But today changed that," I said. "Today changed everything." Joseph's gaze shifted back to Mia. "Because today I realized that she wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to destroy you too, and that's something I can't forgive." Mia straightened up, and I saw a flash of her old defiance return. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under, Joseph. Living in this house with him," she jerked her head toward me, "feeling like a guest in my own home, never being able to make decisions, never being treated like an equal partner. So you decided to have an affair." Joseph's voice was incredulous. "I decided to find someone who actually valued me," she snapped back. "Someone who didn't expect me to play happy family with some old man who can't accept that his son has a wife now." The accusation stung, but I found myself looking at it objectively. Had I made her feel unwelcome? Had I been too much of a presence in their marriage? "Dad," Joseph said, reading my thoughts, "don't even think about blaming yourself. This isn't about you being here. This is about her being a liar and a manipulator." He stood up and walked over to where Mia stood, trembling against the counter. "You want to know what the real problem is, Mia?" The real problem is that you never loved me. You loved the idea of this house, the stability, the security, but you never loved me, and you certainly never gave a damn about Dad. That's not true. It is true, and today proved it. Because a person who actually cared about this family wouldn't have stood in this kitchen and tried to destroy an elderly man's sense of worth and dignity just to get money for her boyfriend. Mia's composure finally shattered completely. "Fine," she screamed. "You want the truth? Yes, I've been seeing David. Yes, I've been taking money from our account. Yes, I wanted your father out of this house because he makes me feel like an outsider every single day." Joseph nodded slowly, as if her confession was exactly what he'd been waiting for. "And the loan?" he pressed. "The $35,000? She laughed bitterly. "David needs it. He's going to start his own business, and we're going to be partners. Real partners, not like this joke of a marriage where I have to ask permission to breathe." "Partners," Joseph repeated. "Is that what you call it when you steal from your husband to support another man?" "I call it surviving," she shot back. "I call it building a future with someone who actually wants me around." The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of Mia's heavy breathing. Joseph walked back to the table and sat down, his movements oddly calm. "Okay," he said simply. "Thank you for being honest." Mia frowned, clearly confused by his reaction. "What do you mean, okay?" Joseph pulled out his phone again and showed her the screen. The recording app was still running. "I mean, okay. Now I have everything I need. The confession, the admission of theft, the confirmation of the affair. All of it recorded, all of it admissible." The blood drained from Mia's face again. "Admissible for what?" Joseph's smile was cold and humorless. "For the divorce, Mia. For the divorce that's going to leave you with absolutely nothing." And as I watched my daughter-in-law realize that she'd just confessed to everything that would destroy her, I began to understand that my son had been playing a much longer game than I'd ever imagined. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in what felt like months, feeling like I actually belonged there. Mia had locked herself in the guest bedroom after Joseph's revelation, and the house felt different somehow. Lighter, like a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying had been lifted off my shoulders. Joseph was already in the kitchen when I came downstairs, coffee brewing, eggs and bacon sizzling in the pan. He looked up when I entered, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled at me. Really smiled, not the strained, worried expression I'd been seeing on his face. "Morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table. "Better than I have in months, actually." "You? Like a baby." He flipped the eggs expertly, a skill I'd taught him when he was 12, and we were living on our own after his mother died. Amazing how well you can sleep when you're not wondering what's going to fall apart next. I studied my son's face. There was something different about him this morning, a kind of focused determination I recognized from when he was younger, when he'd set his mind on solving a problem. "Joseph," I said carefully, "what exactly is your plan here?" He plated the eggs and bacon, setting one in front of me before sitting down with his own. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been planning this for weeks, haven't I? Yesterday wasn't just you coming home at the right time. You knew exactly what was going to happen." Joseph took a bite of his breakfast, chewing thoughtfully. "Not exactly what was going to happen, but I knew something like it would." "Explain." He set down his fork and looked at me directly. "Dad, I've been watching Mia for months. Not just the affair, not just the money. I've been watching how she treats you, how she talks about you when she thinks I'm not listening, how she's been systematically trying to make you feel unwelcome. In your own home." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "Because I needed proof. Real proof, not just suspicions." Joseph leaned forward, his expression serious. "I needed her to show her true colors in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. Yeah, I needed you to see it too, Dad. Because as long as you were making excuses for her behavior, as long as you were trying to keep the peace, she was going to keep pushing until she broke you completely." The truth of that hit me hard. I had been making excuses, hadn't I? Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every time she'd treated me like I was invisible, I'd found ways to rationalize it all. "So you set her up," I said. "I gave her enough rope to hang herself with," Joseph corrected. "The loan request was her idea, Dad. I just didn't stop her from asking. I knew what your answer would be, and I knew how she'd react when she didn't get her way. I shook my head, amazed at the complexity of what my son had orchestrated. How long have you known about David? Joseph's face darkened. 2 months, maybe longer. I found some texts on her phone when she'd left it on the counter one day. At first, I thought maybe I was misreading the situation, but then I started paying closer attention. What kind of attention? I hired a private investigator. Joseph's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could see the pain in his eyes. Her name is Sarah Chen. She's been following Mia for 6 weeks, documenting everything. The hotel visits, the shopping trips where she buys gifts for him with our money, the time she's called in sick to work just to spend the day with him. I felt sick thinking about it, not just the betrayal, but the elaborate deception it must have required. Joseph, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, Dad. Be angry, because what she's been doing to you is just as bad as what she's been doing to me. He got up and walked over to a drawer I'd never seen him use before, pulling out a thick manila folder. Sarah documented everything, not just the affair, but Mia's treatment of you too. He opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. Look at these. The first photo showed Mia going through my mail, carefully steaming open envelopes and photographing the contents with her phone. The second showed her in what looked like a lawyer's office, documents spread out on a desk in front of her. She's been researching your legal rights as a homeowner, Dad. Specifically, she's been trying to find ways to have you declared incompetent so she and I could take control of your assets. My hand started shaking. What? She met with an elder law attorney 3 weeks ago, told him you were showing signs of dementia, that you were becoming a danger to yourself and others. She wanted to know what it would take to get a conservatorship over you. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to process what I was hearing. The attorney told her she'd need medical documentation, witness statements, evidence of cognitive decline or dangerous behavior. That's when she started the real psychological campaign against you. I thought back over the past few weeks, the way she'd started questioning my memory, asking if I'd forgotten conversations we'd never had, the way she'd moved things around the house and then acted concerned when I couldn't find them, the subtle comments about my age, my capabilities, my relevance. She was trying to make me doubt myself, I said quietly. She was trying to drive you to a breakdown, something she could document and use as evidence that you were no longer competent to manage your own affairs. Joseph pulled out another set of documents from the folder. But here's what she didn't know, Dad. I've been documenting everything too. Every cruel comment, every manipulation, every attempt to isolate you or make you feel worthless. I have it all. Why? I asked. Why would you do all this? Joseph's voice broke slightly when he answered, Because I love you, Dad. Because you're the most important person in my life, and I couldn't stand watching her destroy you piece by piece. And because I knew that if I didn't stop her now, she'd eventually succeed. I looked at my son, this man who'd been carrying this burden alone for months, protecting me in ways I'd never even realized I needed protection. What happens now? I asked. Joseph's expression hardened with resolve. Now we make sure she never gets the chance to hurt either of us again. But Dad, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? I thought about everything I'd learned in the past 24 hours. The lies, the manipulation, the systematic campaign to destroy my sense of self-worth. I thought about my son, who'd been silently fighting for me when I didn't even know I needed a fighter. What do you need me to do? Joseph smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes. I need you to help me give Mia exactly what she deserves. But first, I need to show you something that's going to make you understand just how deep this rabbit hole goes. He reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a single sheet of paper. When he handed it to me, my blood ran cold. It was a life insurance policy on me, taken out by Mia 6 months ago, with her listed as the sole beneficiary for $500,000. I stared at the life insurance policy in my hands, the numbers blurring as my mind struggled to process what I was seeing. $500,000. My name on the policy, my death as the triggering event, and Mia as the sole beneficiary. She forged my signature, I said numbly, recognizing the handwriting that was almost, but not quite, my own. Joseph nodded grimly. Sarah's handwriting expert confirmed it, but that's not the worst part, Dad. I looked up at him, not sure I could handle any more revelations. What do you mean? He pulled out another document from the folder, this one a medical report. 3 weeks ago, Mia called Dr. Patterson's office pretending to be your concerned daughter-in-law. She told them you'd been having chest pains but were too stubborn to come in for an examination. Dr. Patterson had been my physician for 15 years. He'd know something was wrong if I suddenly developed heart problems without mentioning them. She also called the pharmacy to ask about your medications, claiming she needed to know for emergency purposes. She wanted to know about interactions, side effects, what would happen if you missed doses or took too much. The implications hit me like a physical blow. She was planning to kill me. I think she was planning to create conditions that would make your death look natural, yes. Joseph's voice was steady, but I could see the rage burning in his eyes. The psychological torture, the isolation, the stress, all of it designed to either drive you to a breakdown she could exploit legally or to a heart attack she could profit from financially. I set the insurance policy down on the table with shaking hands. How long have you known about this? I found the policy 2 weeks ago, hidden in her jewelry box. That's when I knew this wasn't just about an affair or stealing money. That's when I realized she was planning something much worse. I looked around the kitchen, this room where I'd raised my son, where I'd shared thousands of meals and conversations, where I'd felt safe and loved. The idea that someone had been living here, plotting my death, made me feel sick. Joseph, we have to call the police. This is attempted murder. Not yet, Dad. Not until we have everything we need to make sure she goes away for a long time. Joseph's expression was cold and calculated. Right now, all we have is a forged insurance policy and a lot of suspicious behavior. A good lawyer could argue that she was just being financially responsible, preparing for the inevitable. We need more. More what? We need her to act on it. We need her to make a move that clearly shows intent to harm you. The thought terrified me. You want to use me as bait. I want to give her enough rope to hang herself with, just like I did yesterday, but this time we're going to be ready for her. Joseph got up and walked to the window, looking out at the backyard where we'd played catch when he was young. She's desperate now, Dad. Her affair is exposed, her theft is documented, and she knows I have enough evidence to destroy her in a divorce. The only way she comes out of this with anything is if something happens to you before the divorce is finalized. Don, the cold logic of it was terrifying, but I could see he was right. Mia had nothing left to lose now, which made her infinitely more dangerous. What's your plan? I asked. Joseph turned back to me, his face set with determination. Tonight, I'm going to tell her I'm filing for divorce. I'm going to let her know that she's going to lose everything, the house, the money, her reputation. I'm going to make her desperate enough to show her true intentions. And then we wait. Sarah has surveillance equipment set up around the house. Every room, every entrance, every possible way Mia might try to hurt you. We'll catch her in the act, and then we'll have her on attempted murder charges. I shook my head. Joseph, this is too dangerous. What if she succeeds? What if something goes wrong? Nothing's going to go wrong, Dad. I won't let anything happen to you. Joseph knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. But I need you to understand that this is our only chance to stop her permanently. If we don't do this now, if we just call the police with what we have, she might get away with probation or a plea deal. She'll be out in a few years, and she'll come back to finish what she started. I looked into my son's eyes and saw the same determination I'd seen when he was 10 years old, promising to protect me after his mother died. He'd kept that promise then, and I knew he'd keep it now. Okay, I said quietly. What do you need me to do? For the next few hours, Joseph walked me through the plan. I would act normal, maybe even a little defeated after yesterday's confrontation. I would avoid Mia as much as possible, but not in a way that seemed suspicious. Most importantly, I would wear a small recording device and stay in areas of the house where the surveillance cameras could capture everything. The key is to make her think she has an opportunity, Joseph explained. She needs to believe that she can act without being caught, without being suspected. As evening approached, I heard Mia moving around upstairs. She'd been in the guest room all day, making phone calls and packing what sounded like suitcases, getting ready to run probably if Joseph's plan didn't work. "She's getting ready to leave," I said. "No, she's not," Joseph's voice was certain. "She might want to, but she can't. Not with David bleeding money and her facing criminal charges for the theft. The insurance payout is her only way out of this mess." At 7 o'clock, Joseph called Mia downstairs. She appeared in the kitchen doorway looking haggard and defiant, her hair unwashed and her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. "We need to talk," Joseph said simply. She crossed her arms over her chest. "If this is about yesterday, this is about our marriage," Joseph interrupted. "What's left of it?" I started to leave, but Joseph gestured for me to stay. "Dad should hear this too, since it affects his living situation." Mia's eyes darted between us, calculating. "What do you want to say, Joseph?" "I want to say that I'm filing for divorce tomorrow morning. I want to say that you're going to be charged with theft, fraud, and adultery. And I want to say that when this is all over, you're going to have nothing." Mia's facade finally cracked. "You can't do this to me, Joseph. I'm your wife. We can work through this." "No, we can't. And frankly, I don't want to." Joseph's voice was ice cold. "You've been lying to me, cheating on me, and planning to destroy my father. There's nothing left to work through." "Your father?" Mia spat, her mask slipping completely. "Always your father? Do you have any idea what it's like being married to someone who cares more about his daddy than his wife?" "I care about people who deserve my care," Joseph replied calmly. "You stopped deserving it the day you decided to betray this family." Mia's breathing was getting faster, more agitated. I could see the desperation building in her eyes. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll leave. I'll pack my things and go stay with David. You can have your precious house and your precious father all to yourself." "No," Joseph said quietly. "You're not going anywhere." Her eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean I've already spoken to the police about the theft. There's a warrant being prepared. If you try to leave town, you'll be a fugitive." It was a lie. But Mia didn't know that. I watched as the last of her composure shattered, replaced by something wild and dangerous. "You're trying to destroy me," she whispered. "I'm trying to protect my family," Joseph corrected. "Something I should have done months ago." Mia stared at him for a long moment. Then her gaze shifted to me. What I saw in her eyes made my blood run cold. Pure, murderous hatred. "This is all your fault," she said to me, her voice barely human. "If you hadn't been so stubborn, so selfish, none of this would have happened." "Mia," Joseph started, but she cut him off. "No, I'm done pretending. I'm done playing happy family with this pathetic old man who ruined my marriage." She turned and ran upstairs, her footsteps echoing through the house like gunshots. Joseph looked at me, his expression grim. "It's starting, Dad. Stay alert, and remember, everything is being recorded. No matter what happens, we're going to be ready for her." As we heard her slamming drawers and throwing things around upstairs, I realized that the most dangerous part of Joseph's plan was just beginning. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every sound from upstairs, every shadow moving past my bedroom window made my heart race. Joseph had assured me that Sarah's surveillance team was monitoring everything, that I was safe, but knowing someone in your own home wants you dead changes everything about how that home feels. At 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my room. Soft, deliberate steps that paused outside my door for what felt like an eternity. I lay perfectly still, barely breathing, until the footsteps moved away. The next morning, Joseph found me in the kitchen at dawn, nursing my third cup of coffee with shaking hands. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, studying my face. "Not much." She was walking around upstairs most of the night, and she stood outside my door for a while around 3. Joseph's jaw tightened. Sarah's team saw that. They also saw her going through the medicine cabinet in the guest bathroom, looking up drug interactions on her phone. My stomach clenched. "She's planning something for today." "I think so too. That's why I called in sick to work. I'm not leaving you alone with her." As if summoned by our conversation, Mia appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked terrible, pale, hollow-eyed, her hair greasy and unkempt. But there was something in her expression that hadn't been there before, a kind of manic determination that made my skin crawl. "Good morning," she said, her voice artificially bright. "I was hoping we could talk, Mark. About yesterday, about everything that's happened." Joseph started to object, but I held up a hand. "It's okay, son. Mia and I should clear the air." "Actually," Mia said, still smiling that unsettling smile, "I was hoping we could talk privately. Maybe you could run to the store, Joseph? We're out of milk." "I'm not going anywhere," Joseph said firmly. "Please." Mia's voice took on a pleading tone. "I know I said terrible things yesterday. I want to apologize to your father properly, and I think he deserves to hear it without you mediating every word." I caught Joseph's eye and nodded slightly. We needed her to act, and she wouldn't do anything with him in the house. "Fine," Joseph said reluctantly, "but I'm not going far, and I'm not staying away long." After he left, Mia's entire demeanor changed. The fake sweetness vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "You know," she said conversationally, "I've been thinking about what Joseph said yesterday, about the divorce, about losing everything. And I realized he's right. I am going to lose everything, my marriage, my home, my future, all because of you." She opened the cabinet and pulled out a bottle of my heart medication, shaking it gently so the pills rattled inside. "Did you know that this medication can be dangerous if you take too much? Or if you mix it with certain other drugs?" My mouth went dry. "Mia, what are you doing?" "I'm solving a problem." She opened the bottle and poured several pills into her palm. "See, if something happened to you, something natural, something that looked like an accident or maybe just the stress of recent events, then a lot of my problems would go away." She walked to the sink and filled a glass with water, then set it on the counter in front of me along with the pills. "Take them, Mark." "No," her smile turned vicious. "I wasn't really asking. You see, I've done my research. An elderly man, recently under severe emotional stress, accidentally takes too much of his heart medication. Maybe he was confused, maybe he was depressed after the fight with his daughter-in-law. Tragic, but these things happen. Joseph will know what you did. Joseph will be devastated by his father's sudden death. He'll blame himself for the stress of the divorce proceedings, and I'll be there to comfort him, to help him through his grief. Eventually, he'll forgive me for the affair. Grief makes people do strange things." She picked up one of the pills and held it out to me. "Plus, there's that insurance policy to consider. $500,000 goes a long way toward starting fresh." "You're insane." "I'm desperate. And desperate people are capable of anything." Her voice turned hard. "Dangerous. Take the pills, Mark. Take them voluntarily or I'll find another way. Maybe something that looks like a fall down the stairs, maybe a kitchen accident. I'm creative when I need to be." I stared at the pills in her hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give out on its own. "Mia, please, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. You ruined my life, and now you're going to pay for it." She grabbed my chin, forcing my mouth open, trying to shove the pills inside. I struggled against her, knocking the water glass to the floor where it shattered. "Stop fighting me," she screamed, her mask of sanity completely gone now. "Just die, you worthless old man. Just die and let me have my life back." That's when the front door burst open. "Police! Nobody move!" Officers flooded into the kitchen, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Mia froze, the pill still clutched in her hand, her eyes wide with shock and terror. Behind them came Joseph, his face grim but relieved. "Dad, are you okay?" I nodded, unable to speak, watching as they handcuffed Mia while she screamed protests and accusations. "This is entrapment. They set me up. I wasn't really going to hurt him." Detective Martinez, a woman in her 50s with kind but sharp eyes, knelt beside my chair. "Mr. Holloway, do you need medical attention?" "No," I managed. "I'm okay, shaken up, but okay." She nodded. "We have everything on video, sir. The attempted poisoning, the threats, the confession about the insurance fraud. Mrs. Holloway is going to be going away for a very long time." As they led Mia out in handcuffs, she turned back to look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Fear. The fear of someone who had finally been caught, who was about to face the consequences of their actions. "This isn't over, Mark," she called out, as they pushed her toward the door. "I'll get out eventually, and when I do—" "No, you won't," Detective Martinez said calmly. "Attempted murder of an elderly person, insurance fraud, theft, conspiracy. You're looking at 25 years minimum. By the time you get out, Mr. Holloway will be long past worrying about you." After they were gone, Joseph and I sat in the sudden quiet of the kitchen, surrounded by the debris of the morning's events. "How long were they watching?" I asked. "Sarah's team has been monitoring the house for 3 days. The police have been on standby since yesterday evening." Joseph reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Dad, but it was the only way to make sure she could never hurt you again." I nodded, understanding, but still shaken. "What happens now?" "Now we clean up the mess she left behind. I file for divorce, we deal with the legal proceedings, and we get our lives back." Joseph stood up and began sweeping up the broken glass from the water tumbler. "Dad, I need you to know something. Everything she said about you, about being unwanted or unwelcome, none of that was true. This is your house, your home, and you will always belong here." I felt tears building in my eyes, not from fear or pain, but from relief. "I know, son, I know." 6 months later, I was sitting on the back porch watching Joseph work in the garden we'd planted together. Mia had been convicted on all charges and sentenced to 30 years in prison. The house felt like home again, filled with laughter instead of tension, warmth instead of cold calculation. My phone rang, and I saw an unfamiliar number on the screen. "Hello? Mr. Holloway? This is Detective Martinez. I wanted to let you know that we've uncovered additional evidence in your case." "What kind of evidence?" "We found communications between your former daughter-in-law and several other individuals. It appears this wasn't her first attempt at insurance fraud. She's now being investigated in connection with 2 other suspicious deaths, her first husband and her elderly aunt." I felt a chill run down my spine. You mean you weren't her first intended victim? If your son hadn't intervened when he did, you would likely have become her 3rd successful murder." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a long time, thinking about how close I'd come to becoming just another casualty of Mia's greed. But more than that, I thought about Joseph, about the courage it had taken for him to see the truth about his wife and act on it. "Dad," Joseph called from the garden, "you okay over there?" I looked at my son, this man who had saved my life in more ways than one, and smiled. "I'm perfect, son. Absolutely perfect." For the first time in years, that was completely true.